Thank you, Mr. President. It's a pleasure to follow Senator Brown in suggesting support for this particular budget that is in front of us now on this Friday morning, June 30th. I think it is also, given Senator Brown's comments, I think it is also important that we provide some context to this budget and the process that allowed us to get to where we are right now. We are struggling through a difficult economic environment. Decisions made in the past continue to provide some constraints on our ability to aggressively move forward with the appropriate investments to deal with some very significant challenges that exist for many of Pennsylvania's people. Economy is not growing at the rate we need it to grow. Jobs are not being created at the rate that they need to be created. But those are decisions made in the past. And the question then becomes, how do we move forward? How do we grapple with a difficult economic environment? And how do we get to this moment that we're in right now? Should be reminded, Mr. President, that on February, the first Tuesday in February of this year, Governor Wolf introduced and provided a very austere budget proposal of $32.3 billion. It was modest, it was thoughtful, it was an attempt to address the social and political realities that exist here in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, but it was a document that allowed Pennsylvania to move forward. Followed by that, in weeks of public hearings by both the House and the Senate, by the respective appropriations committees, in April of this year, the House passed a budget of $31.5 billion, which unfortunately was, my words, our language, very draconian. Lots of cuts, lots of reductions, a document that really didn't reflect the needs of the people of the Commonwealth, given where we are right now. In the process over the last several months since the passage of the budget coming out of the House, there's been significant conversations, in many respects, shuttle diplomacy, what have you, with all parties to get us to a point. And clearly, our effort was to get closer to what the governor introduced back in February of this year, to restore the cuts in various areas, to be thoughtful about how we structure state government, and to present what hopefully will be a strong foundation to go into the future with next year's budget. So what we have, Mr. President, is a budget process that started out as an introduction with the governor of $32.3 billion, which followed up by a passage of a budget out of the House, which was $31.5 billion, and now a negotiated agreement of a budget that is now $31.996 billion, driving closer to where the governor first introduced this budget. Now, in that, as was said earlier, Mr. President, and we cannot, I think we cannot ignore that in this budget we have restored many of the job creation programs that exist in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. More opportunities for economic development, for more growth, for more jobs, real fundamental job creation programs. We've made investments in both our basic education, our K-12 education, and our college sector. We've funded our basic education with a $100 million increase, which I believe, Mr. President, gets us back to the cuts that were made in the previous administration and restores almost fully those cuts that were made in the previous administration in our basic education lines. We've increased our special education by $25 million. We've added $25 million for the pre-K counts program, another $5 million for Head Start, another $11 million for early intervention. An important down payment on really what we need to do about really jettisoning forward our education system with appropriate financing, which provides 21st century education opportunities for all of the children, no matter where they are in the Commonwealth. We're not completely there, but this is an important investment. We have, Mr. President, as we looked at getting investments in our spending areas, we've also taken final steps in making Pennsylvania government operate more streamlined, more thoughtfully, more efficiently. A proposal that this caucus introduced several years ago, I want to say almost 5 years ago, Mr. President, of combining the Departments of Corrections and Probation and Parole will now finally come to fruition. That will be reflected in this budget, making those two essential important agencies which need to more closely work together. We're structurally putting that in place, and we think that that is an important step, being efficient, being thoughtful, being smart about how the Commonwealth should operate. In addition, Mr. President, we listened closely to the governor's budget, governor's proposal of unifying a number of the different agencies, and even though there's still more work that has to be done in that area, we did make the decision to combine our Human Services, our Department of Human Services, and our Department of Health. And so that is a good thing. Listening closely to the governor's proposal, a number of hearings all across the Commonwealth by various different standing committees in the Senate, and the result of that is we've decided to combine Human Services and Health, making sure that these agencies work more closer together to achieve better results for the people of the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. So, Mr. President, we've struggled through smartly, I think, thoughtfully, given the current environment that we're in. We've decided to reject and push back on some of the uglier conversation that is occurring in other places around this country, and decided to work more thoughtfully together with one another with cooler heads to try to get something positive done. For many of us, this is not all that we need to have to address some very real issues in communities across the Commonwealth, both in rural and urban communities, but this is a step forward. We balanced out the governor's proposal, which was austere, with the proposal that came out of the House, which we believe was draconian, to something that is moderate and modest, but does move the Commonwealth forward. We thought we've created an opportunity to streamline the state operations with mergings of various departments, and thankfully we'll get this done. Hopefully, prayerfully, we should be able to get this part of this effort done on time. So, Mr. President, I would encourage an affirmative vote by our members and all members on this document. I would thank, again, the great spirit of cooperation between both our offices and our staff, Senator Brown's offices and his staff, and all engaged in this process.